when we talk about supply and demand in the private market, we are looking at it from the perspectives of the buyers and the sellers, the consumers and the producers. Because when the producers are the ones selling the goods and the consumers are the ones who are buying it, they're really the only ones who are concerned. In reality, however, purchasing decisions affect other people. They also affect, a lot of times, third parties who had nothing to do with the transaction. We call that an externality. So an externality is a cost or a benefit to some third party who is not involved in the transaction. And they usually aren't taken into account when determining how much to produce. So, and the reason why is that only the private costs and the private benefits are considered. Now, this results in inefficient production levels. It results in market failure. So let's look at that. So there's two types of externalities. There's a negative externality and a positive externality. A negative externality is a cost to a third party. Somebody who did not buy the good or sell the good, but they're being impacted. So for example, pollution. When determining to buy a car, you have the buyers, you have the sellers, and based on those individuals, a price is determined. However, when you buy a car, somebody else can have a negative consequence of you buying it, and that is the pollution that the car puts out. Okay, so when you drive your car, assuming it's a gas-powered, it puts pollution into the air that people inhale, and in some areas where this is a real problem, where smog is a problem, that this is a big deal. So you may not have bought the car or sold the car, but because of it, there's a cost that you had to realize. So another example is smoking. When it comes to cigarettes, you may not buy it, you may not sell it, but if you inhale it from secondhand smoke, there's a cost that you have to deal with. Now, when we look at externalities, negative externality, these costs on the third party aren't factored in. So society, when you look at their costs, it's understated. So there's two ways to look at this. So we have marginal cost and marginal social cost. Marginal cost, that's the private costs of the buyers and the sellers. The marginal external cost, which is included with that marginal social cost, also includes the cost to that third party, the cost to the people who are inhaling the pollution or the smoke. Okay. Now, if it's a competitive market, what's going to get produced is that point where marginal cost equals marginal benefit, that equilibrium. But what is socially optimal is where the marginal social cost equals the marginal benefit, because that is the amount that is best for society. So if we look at this, so here we have our marginal cost and we have our marginal benefit. And these are coming from the private sellers and buyers of the good. However, there is a negative externality, which is some amount that everybody has to basically deal with for it. And there's a cost that a third party has to deal with. Now, depending on it, it may either be a parallel one, or it may increase the greater the quantity. This is just showing if they're producing, it's going to be higher, and the same for everyone, or the same for all quantities. But the basic idea, though, is that the marginal social cost is actually higher. For each unit, and let's get rid of this for a second. So for each unit that gets produced, the actual cost is higher because you have that external cost. But again, that cost doesn't get factored in. So what ends up getting produced is our equilibrium here, our QE and our PE, our equilibrium price and quantity. However, what is best for society is that lower quantity because you have all that cost. So if you remember that marginal social cost, that is what the cost to overall society was. Okay. So what happens is this is where we should be, all right, on the marginal benefit and the marginal social cost. So we should be right here. Where are we really? We are at the equilibrium. So what we have then is we are producing more QE than is best for society. So when there's a negative externality, all costs are not being realized, they're not being factored in, and so we're producing more than we should. The second type of externality is a positive externality. Now, not all externalities are bad. A positive externality is a benefit to a third party, somebody who neither buys nor sells the good, who is still benefiting from it. So, for example, let's say you own a home and your neighbor has a perfectly kept yard. Grass is always cut. It's always perfectly green. All the bushes are perfectly cut. There's never any weeds. Nothing. Well, how's that been? So he's spending on, or she's spending on, upkeep on the yard, the weed control, a higher water amount to keep the grass green, so forth. So you're not buying that, you're not selling it, but you're getting a benefit. You're getting that benefit because the value of your home is going to be higher. Okay? If you have a neighbor's home who looks good, that makes your value higher because people are going to live next to somebody who has a nice house compared to someone who doesn't have a nice house. Now, granted, it's one part of it, but still part of it. Another example is a vaccine. If you get a vaccine, or let's say a flu shot, you're the buyer of the vaccine, and there's a seller of it. However, if let's say everybody gets that flu shot except for one person, that one person is still benefiting from everybody else getting it. Because everybody else got the flu shot, they are all now less likely to get the flu, and so the other person is also less likely to get the flu. And so they benefited despite the fact that they did not buy it or sell it. So just as with negative externalities, with a positive externalities, the marginal benefits to society are understated. So you have the private marginal benefit, but there's also a marginal external benefit. And again, society is going to produce where the marginal cost equals the marginal benefit, but it's socially optimal. The most people are going to benefit where the marginal cost equals the marginal social benefit. And so there's not going to be enough produced. So let's look at that. So here we have a positive externality. And again, we have our marginal benefit and our marginal cost. Where they produce is where the two equal each other because they're concerned with themselves, each other. And so QE is where we produce. However, because there's a benefit to third parties, because of that benefit, that external benefit, the marginal social benefit is higher. And so we should be producing where the marginal cost equals the marginal social benefit. So we should be a QS. So we're actually not producing at a level where society as a whole is benefiting the most. We are underproducing. Now, there may be times when the government will step in to attempt to correct for these externalities, either the positive or the negative. So with the negative externalities, because we are not producing enough, with the negative externalities because we are overproducing, they may try to bring down the production. So for example, with cigarettes, they do it with taxes. All right, taxes is a big way they do it. They also put a quota on it. But with taxes, it's a higher amount that people have to pay. And so people are less willing to buy cigarettes. And so that lowers the production down. They can also do it by giving people safer alternatives. So, for example, tax breaks for things that cut down on pollution. Tax breaks if you buy a electric car, which cuts down on pollution, right? And it decreases the amount of gas car production. And with positive externalities, they can also do it with subsidies or tax breaks. So encourage it by giving them the incentive. But in general, externalities are either a cost or a benefit to a third party. It's something that a person who does not buy the good or sell the good is somehow impacted by it. And a negative externality is a cost to that third party, something negative that third party has to have because of that transaction, whereas a positive externality is a benefit to that third party. And sometimes the government will step in to try to get the production levels where they need to be, because with a negative externality, we're producing too much than is socially desirable. And with a positive, we're not producing as much as we need to. So the government will sometimes step in and try to correct this.